Okay, and thank you so much, Danielle, for leading our discussion today.
Yeah, no worries. I'm super excited to meet you all. For those who I haven't connected with, I'm Danielle Rose. I support our public sector partnerships here at Interplay Learning. So for today, I thought I'd share a little bit more about what we do at Interplay, how we got started, how we work with libraries, and then give you kind of a tour of the platform. But for some foundational context, we work with libraries across the country like Boston, Queens, Austin Public Library, variety of different levels, whether it's a local library, a county library system, a city library, to really help support skilled trades training and programming for patrons. I'll share my screen and just run you guys through a variety of like foundational pieces on Interplay, and we can dig in. But as mentioned, please put questions in the chat. Like, please feel welcome to come off mute. We can be a close group today and chat through anything that comes top of mind. So the way we provide trades training and interplay learning is through simulated based learning. So I'm not sure if any of you have experienced simulation based learning at your libraries and systems. Please feel free to put that in the chat, but we'll go through some examples today of like why that is an important training methodology, especially when we're thinking about hands-on trades opportunities and career pathing. So we've been around for almost a decade now, and since then we've trained almost 600,000 learners across a wide scope of organizations to include libraries. That's been through over 2,500 hours of unique content in areas like HVAC, electrical, facilities maintenance, plumbing, solar, automotive, crane operation, advanced manufacturing, lots of different areas, primarily related to the construction and building related skilled trades. Um, as we grow, we're definitely open to more catalogs, but just knowing about the trades landscape and how many jobs are available that are left unfilled year over year, it's been a huge priority for us. We actually got started working with employers and have partnered since with over 12,000 customers. As you can see here, there's really a huge landscape of different partners that we really have here. Workforce development groups like libraries, including yourselves. We work with a lot of local, regional, and national nonprofit organizations. We work with different union and non-union trades programs that offer anything from pre-apprenticeship to apprenticeship programming. And through a lot of those relationships, we have a great relationship with the Federal Department of Labor and a lot of the State Department of Labors as well to be able to make sure that content from our platform qualifies for related training instruction hours that people can apply to their pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship program. So oftentimes when we're working with a group, we'll either supplement their existing trades programming, but more often than not in the workforce development space, we're helping folks upstand and implement a trades program for the first time. With schools, similar, we're either working with them to supplement CTE programs, if you have CTE schools or CTCs or BOCES in your state. We really help to either complement programming. We serve as a bridge between the theory and the practice, but we also can help schools upstand programs. Really, I think where a lot of folks in the workforce development and education space find a lot of value is the fact that our initial relationships were with manufacturers, building out custom content for groups like Daikin, Rheem, Carrier, Train, who are well known in the space, and then working with employers ranging from small mom and pop shops like my dad's auto body shop that has 3 technicians, all the way up to the CBREs of the space that have thousands and thousands of technicians across the country and even on a global landscape. Additionally, and the last thing I'll share on this slide is that we also partner with a lot of certification and accreditation bodies. We have an international accreditation from IACET, which offers continuing education training credits. And then we also work with a lot of third-party partners to provide certs like OSHA 10 in general or construction, in English or Spanish. NATE, which is North American Technician Excellences, Ready to Work or CHP5 certifications, which are great for the HVAC space. EPA 608, we have a relationship with the Environmental Protection Agency to offer that refrigerant handling certification. So just some examples of ways in which we're really not only offering exposure and exploratory options as people think about careers in the skilled trades, but we also offer really tangible training and certification opportunities too, which differentiates us from a lot of other groups that provide simulation-based learning. So when we think about what encompasses a successful simulation-based program, of course, the simulations are a great foundational tool for learners to really kind of understand how to manipulate tools and how to diagnose and repair equipment or install equipment. Really, we're trying to serve as a bridge between the theory and practice. So with the theory, we offer a lot of video-based learning as well in our platform, and it's a good even mix of simulations, videos, and assessments on the back end. Reason being, we want to make sure everything's digestible for the learner, but that we give them the why and how and some foundational context before they go into the simulated activity. We also offer learner management. So we don't have ILS integration capabilities at this time, but we do integrate with learning management systems and have our own to be able to quickly get learners activated and deactivated in the platform and also see how they're doing. So perhaps, for example, a library might have a wait list for the resource interplay learning. And then folks might go in and say, these users haven't really taken advantage of their access for whatever reason. They might have had a family situation come up. You can then kind of move over those users, or you can see, wow, this user is really excelling. If there's an opportunity, I can extend their usage. So there's a lot of options at the back end to get automated reporting, but also see granular details about patron progress. The last slide I'll include here before we can dive into the platform and show you a little more. Really, for those of you who haven't used simulations before, I feel like a lot of folks will correlate the virtual reality to the simulations and assume that that's the only way to deploy simulation-based learning. While virtual reality is incredible and a great tool, we are device agnostic. So a lot of organizations may only have their simulations accessible on virtual reality, but you can actually use ours on a phone, a tablet, a laptop, a desktop computer, virtual reality headset. So really, whatever device a patron has access to, they can deploy the simulations and the activities within the platform. But really, the goal behind the simulations in general, again, is to not only serve as that bridge between the theory and practice, but in an intentional way, right? We're trying to offer some experiential learning where learners have that safe, risk-free environment to have unlimited practice, make mistakes, learn from them, and ultimately the goal, get them more comfortable and confident with what they're doing so that they can be safer and more effective when they're in a lab setting, if they have the opportunity, or they are on the job. So really with the simulations, a lot of folks say, why trades training? A lot of people learn better in a hands-on format. And to that I say, we're not trying to take away the hands-on again. Like we're really trying to foster those connections for learners so that they again get that additional practice. When we think about a space like aviation, that's also high cost and high risk like the trades. And they use simulations quite frequently in training, as does the medical space, the military, right? I'm sure everyone here has probably seen or had an opportunity to play at some point in their life the game Operation. Think of that as like a very early simulation. You have the body, there's a bone, a heart, a brain, and you're using your little tweezers to try to get those parts out of the game board. And when you hit those tweezers in an incorrect spot, it's going to buzz you. That's kind of simulating like the danger or effects of making a mistake. Of course, simulations have come a long way since then. They're a lot more relevant, accurate, descriptive, provide a lot more resources. Um, like I always again go back to the aviation space, right? Like no one is hearing about flying a plane and then getting in a plane and flying it. They're getting into a simulated environment, so again, they can get that risk-free, unlimited practice so that they feel more comfortable and confident with what they're doing before they actually do the real thing. Um, so while I log into the platform, want to give you guys an opportunity to ask any questions that might come to mind about simulations before we dive in and I show you what some of them look like. And if there are none, no pressure, but just want to give space for that in between.
I'll just comment that I'm really glad you said that it was device agnostic, because in my head I was thinking, well, if you don't already have the VR capabilities or you don't have the devices and stuff, that there would be adopting that in addition. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a great like add to kind of phasing in programming. A lot of times we'll suggest folks get started with the devices they already have. Um, Computers in a desktop format at the library, or if patrons have access to their own device, like a tablet or a laptop. I think the virtual reality is a great component. But just for reference, when we're thinking about lecture style learning, if someone were to be in trades programming in a lecture format, retention is about 20%. So, thinking of today's conversation, naturally, y'all are probably going to remember about 20% of what we talked about. And I don't take offense to that because that's the way the human brain works. It's how mine works. When you put someone in a simulated environment, whether it is on a tablet, a laptop, or virtual reality, you see that jump from 20% to 75% retention. You put someone in virtual reality for a longer duration programming, and you can see it jump up to 80, 85%. So still a significant increase, but that 20 to 75% is where we're really seeing an impact. So we like to say that while virtual reality is incredible, it doesn't have to be a part of the plan. Nick, I see your question in the chat about technology competence. For reference, all of our content is built at a 6th to 10th grade reading level. So most content is built at that 6th grade reading level. And when a learner gets in the platform, they're actually asked to complete a course that is our navigation guide. So they'll actually move throughout a program that's going to teach them how to use the platform when they get into a course. Organizations can either require that or they can suggest it to learners in the platform. When we're thinking about technology literacy, that's something that oftentimes a lot of trades folks struggle with because they're used to using their hands or perhaps not feeling as comfortable with technology because they aren't using it as often in the workspace. Now that we see that changing, a lot of times folks will use tablets on the job in a trade setting. We're seeing those competencies increase, but we know that a lot of folks who are getting into the trades for the first time might not have that comfortability. So our platform's really designed in a digestible format, again, with those courses to be able to start navigating the platform. We try to keep it pretty straightforward. They have a dashboard that they can enroll in content and see what their priorities are. And then in our academy style platform, it's really self-paced and guided by unlocking courses as you complete courses so that it's really staged in nature and you can really uh, be led through the platform in a successful way. In terms of your other question, Nick, on measuring retention, um, we have done those studies with Strata Education. So while we're not consistently measuring retention. Really, those are a lot of studies done with us by Strata Education in previous years to measure the difference between different modalities and styles of learning. So we've sourced some of those in follow-up information that I can send along to the team after the call. Any other questions before we dig into the platforms? Okay. For the purpose of today's conversation, just want to give you a super high level overview that we have two platforms. For today, we'll focus on not Interplay Achieve, but Interplay Academy because of the self-paced nature of the programming. But just know that we do have some libraries that use Interplay Achieve as their option for patron learning as an online resource. So, Interplay Achieve is less self-paced or guided in nature. Think of Interplay Achieve as more of an exploratory model where learners can go into our main catalog and explore or engage in any course from any of our catalogs, including career exploration. Sometimes folks prefer this because essentially they can let the learner, the patron, anyone who really engages in the platform, self-select and choose what courses they want to engage with. I would say the drawback to that, if you're looking to have someone in intentional programming, it's really going to take away from the fact that they can kind of peruse anything and everything and get out of a structured learning format. But if you're okay and want them to really peruse whatever they'd like, sometimes folks will assume that their patrons might be upskilling. You can really go in, you can search for any course. Say a learner wants to get their EPA 608 certification. They can take a path, which is a sequence of courses, or go into particular courses to prep for that exam and do things like take a practice test. If someone wants to go into ladder safety because they've had some concerns on the job or they've been told to, explore some of this content or they want to take a look at, what it would be like to be an HVAC technician, they can go through a variety of courses and search at their leisure or peruse through the catalogs. What's different about Interplay Academy and why it's my preferred platform personally for workforce development partners of ours, it's really intentional with how it puts learners through content. So we have a career exploration, what we call quiz, but it's really like an interest assessment where learners, when they enroll and a library enrolls them with their first name, their last name, and their email, when they take that quiz that is sent to them, it's really going to give them an understanding of what trades that we feel like, based on their responses, they most closely align with. So we'll ask them questions, things like, do you prefer to be on a team when you're at work, or do you like to be an individual contributor? Are you comfortable getting dirty on the job, or perhaps that's not really for you? Are you scared of heights, or do you feel like having a job where you might be high in the air multiple times throughout the day wouldn't necessarily scare you, right? Lots of different questions that'll help them really understand which industries they'd be best served by in the workforce. Sometimes folks come in and they want to explore every single industry that we have to offer. And we have different career exploration modules where learners can start a course. They'll hear from industry experts, whether it's entry-level technicians, master licensed plumbers in this case. And then they'll go on to learn about the industry as a whole. So for plumbing, they check out some water supply systems, learn how water is distributed, learn about pressure, gravity, drains. And then we put them through some scenarios like troubleshooting a sink and replacing a garbage disposal so that they can understand what it might be like and learn about a day on the job as a plumber. So again, these are all digestible. Learners can pop in and out of the courses as they choose. A lot of our activities within our courses are somewhere between 3 and 7 minutes to really make sure that that learning is bite-sized and they feel comfortable either stepping away and revisiting or pushing through more content if they're finding it engaging. So as mentioned, learners can really explore any trade that we have to offer. Sometimes institutions, nonprofits, libraries will put learners through a required, like you need to explore at least 3 trades before you move into a formalized program. Some ask learners to complete them all. And some will say, as long as you explore one, I'm fine with you choosing to further your education through an academy. When we get to an academy, essentially learners can self-select after career exploration and say, I would like to further my education in plumbing. Once they select plumbing, it sends a notification to the library to use a seat for them in an academy style programming, let's say Plumbing Academy, for example. Same with HVAC, multifamily maintenance, what have you. The library really has the autonomy to allow learners to complete multiple programs, but we just suggest that if someone wants to complete HVAC and plumbing, for example, to complete one at a time so that they're more focused and intentional about moving through the coursework. Um, you can approve that learner to jump into programming, and some libraries say, I would prefer to have learners be able to automatically move in once they select their trade of choice. What's great about Academy too is that through the career exploration process, some learners might realize that perhaps they don't want to pursue trades training. And while we'd love for everybody to move forward with a career in the skilled trades because we know how valuable they are to the workforce and to the patrons who pursue them, really, it's also a great indicator to say, okay, maybe there's other programming that this patron would be better served by or a better online resource for them and their needs. Career exploration is free for all patrons. Essentially, when you sign up for Academy with us, again, career exploration is included at no cost, and then there are licenses for programs and certifications for learners to continue training. So that's why sometimes folks will have that criteria and say, I want everybody to explore all of the trades before they make a selection, because I want to ensure that if they do get permission to use one of our licenses, then they will complete the program. So I'd love to take you through a simulation in one of our HVAC academies. I think these are fun. And again, I'm from the Northeast, so this time of year, I'm like just getting our ACs out. So I personally love HVAC training. But before I do, any questions so far about the Academy platform while I'm getting us into a simulation? And I'll keep an eye on the chat in case any pop up. But when you get into an academy, say a learner, say myself, I go through career exploration and I want to move forward with HVAC training, I would click the Getting Started module. That's a path of multiple courses. And you'll see that all these individual courses show up for me to engage with. My path is unlocked since I'm an administrator, but essentially you would see this grayed out with a lock on it if I hadn't completed what is HVAC first. So it'll really guide the learner to complete everything in a sequential order. Each course, again, similar to what you saw earlier, has subchapters that open up into different activities like videos, simulations, and knowledge checks to engage with. The course overviews will give the learner a foundational understanding of what they're going to cover, as well as a breakdown of each course, just like they did in career exploration. As the learner digs in, they're going to cover more intensive content, so they'll move through fundamentals, electrical for HVAC, refrigeration, troubleshooting, right? Um, at that point, the learner is going to start to see the simulation numbers increase per course. So some courses will have somewhere between 30, 40, even 50 simulation-based activities for them to complete. Reason being, we're focused on troubleshooting here at Interplay Learning. Really, what we found from employers to make a successful technician is to teach folks about the industry and then teach them about the equipment that they're going to be engaging with so that they can simulate, again, simulate that on the job experience that they'll be having. So, for example, in our residential AC troubleshooting course, we're going to cover all of the different indoor and outdoor components in a residential air conditioner one by one and cover the various faults or mishaps that could happen with that component within the piece of equipment. That way, when a technician gets a service call, and someone says, my AC is broken, can you help fix it? They're able to easily diagnose and repair based on these different scenarios that they've experienced and will definitely be seeing on the job. The way we do that is through a variety of tools, like a walkthrough video that's led by an industry expert. So a subject matter expert that will really give them the why and how behind what they're doing while walking them through the exact simulation they're going to complete. So our goal is to really give a lot of guidance and build repetition because that's what's going to ultimately support the retention. So I won't show you the whole walkthrough video, but I do want to give you a snippet so that you can see what a patron experiences before they actually get to the simulation, and then we can go through a simulation together.
Hi, my name is Tim, and in this short video, I'm going to show you how to troubleshoot a faulty indoor fan relay or indoor blower relay on a residential air conditioner. Now, like with any service call, make sure the thermostat's calling for cooling. So we're going to click the selector switch here, which will turn the selector to cool position. It will also turn down the temperature setting below the room temperature. Next, we need to click OK on the procedure guide at the top, and we're going to need to do that after each step. Next, we want to take an inventory of which electrical loads are running. And if we look here, the indoor fan is not operating. Now, you'd be able to hear it running, or if you don't have speakers, these blue arrows would be spinning if the fan was running. So no, the fan's not running. Now we go to the outdoor unit, and we can see that both the now, we haven't determined whether it's the coil or the contacts, but that doesn't really matter. We've got power to the coil. The contacts should be pulling in. The relay is going to have to be replaced. But before we do that, I want to show you something. Let's click back on the wiring diagram here on the bottom left. And you'll notice that you can see the placement of your meter leads here on the wiring diagram shown at the load side.
So again, really these walkthrough videos are meant to give some additional context to the learner. That way the patron isn't necessarily jumping right into a simulation without that context. Again, lots of courses get us to this point where we're actually troubleshooting a residential air conditioner, but we'll take folks from the basics of like a simulation that teaches them how to put on their PPE to keep safe, how to use a multimeter, the tool that you're seeing to measure voltage in this simulation. So there will be a lot of steps until they get here. But again, just want to show you what the troubleshooting is like. So we'll load up one of these simulations so that we can complete what we just saw the instructor walk the patron through. Really, there's a variety of simulations in the platform. What you'll see here is called training mode. Again, we're really walking a learner through step by step because they'll have a procedure guide here. So they might not have an instructor overlay giving them that context, but they just came off that contextual video. They'll have what you can see here, what we call glowing orange hotspots that guide them where to click and engage, regardless of whether they're on a laptop, a tablet, or in virtual reality. And again, that procedure guide at the top, really. As learners progress throughout more difficult simulations in the course, we'll put them through challenge and assessment scenarios where they might not know the issue from the outset. Like here, the patron knows it's the indoor fan relay and the air conditioner. They might just say, there's an issue with the air conditioner. Use this location feature to move around the house and figure it out. There won't be that procedure guide. So again, gradually reducing guidance to foster that independence. So we can walk through the simulation here together so that you can see what it's like for a patron. And then I want to make sure I leave plenty of time for questions at the end and for other business y'all have to cover. But essentially, when you're in the simulation, you can look around the location. You can use the location feature to move around, to be outside, head back to the thermostat, right? So there's a lot of different features. And again, we have a whole course to cover navigating simulations that we recommend you require of learners before they're actually moving through the simulation. So here we can go ahead and set the thermostat system switch to cool. It says the set to temp of 72 is below the ambient at current temp of 78 degrees. So it's a lot hotter than the customer wants it. We want to look and see if the indoor fan's operating. And based on what that instructor Tim said, I don't see or hear anything. So I'll assume no, but let's just say I click yes. It's actually going to give me an incorrect mark, and I won't be able to move forward until I select the right answer. So again, in training mode, we're really holding the patron's hand to get them to understand. Learners need to get an 80% or higher in order to successfully complete the activity, but they can take it as many times as they need to in order to move forward. Now we're outside. It says, are the outdoor fan and compressor operating? I hear and see those, so I'm going to say yes. And we'll go ahead and head back downstairs. We'll remove that indoor unit cover. And it says before diagnosis, we have to complete the live dead live protocol, which is an OSHA safety standard to make sure our multimeter is working properly before we get to work. So a learner, again, will move throughout the simulated activity, really looking to see, are we getting that voltage we're looking for? How's that going to operate in a troubleshooting setting? Here we'll turn off the power, and you can see on resources we have like a wiring diagram, but that's all live in nature too. So a little different than like a PDF resource or hearing about it. We'll actually showcase to the learner what that looks like so they can understand flow in real time. Since again, obviously working with electricity is a safety concern. So here we're just making sure that when the power is on and off, our multimeter is reading that the power is on and off correctly, so that when we are troubleshooting here, like we will on the actual indoor fan relay that we're trying to diagnose a problem with, it is working properly. So here we're looking for 24 volts on those blue and green wires. We have that on our simulation based multimeter. We'll do the same here on the top, which is the line side of that indoor fan relay, and we're getting 240. And now we'll check the load side finally. And I'm not seeing any voltage here, even though we're supposed to be expecting 240, so I'll say no. That makes sense because for context, these red and black wires are connected to the fan and the fan's not working, so we're assuming there's a problem here. So it says, is that problem a loose wire, right? Like, is there anything disconnected? I don't see anything, but if I wanted to go ahead and click around, we're going to give the patron a shock hazard too to let them know, like, whoa, the power is still on. We turned it back on for troubleshooting, so we don't want to be manipulating the wires because that is an unsafe procedure. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and turn the power off and lock out that switch. Lockout tagout's another safety best practice in the trade space to make sure if I ran upstairs to go grab some lunch, no one didn't realize the power was off and was touching the equipment. Again, another safety feature. So here, we're just gonna make sure the power is off before we actually replace the equipment. And so now it's actually safe to interact with the motor. We can go ahead and replace that, as you can see here. And we'll see if that resolved the issue. So again, we can turn the power back on. And you may have noticed before this indoor blower motor and the indoor fan relay were not operating. Reason being that equipment needed to be replaced. So you can take a look at that indoor fan. You can see in here that it's operating again. So we'll actually go ahead and take the patron upstairs. Just make sure that the system's fixed, circulating cool air. And that's how they'll wrap up the simulation. So we only got a question or two wrong there. That still kept us at the 80% we need to move forward. So then the learner would go through really another simulation on what to do if the wires were an issue or there was a loose wire rather than needing to replace that indoor fan relay. So we'll take them through a variety of different activities, course to course, path to path, and ultimately throughout the entire academy, for example, HVAC, which is what we just went through, so that we can teach them about the inner workings, but also how to effectively troubleshoot equipment. So they'll earn a job-ready certificate at the end of their training. That's employer validated by the thousands of employers that we work with. Not only will we cover that technical training, but we'll also then put learners into workplace professionalism content. Things like dealing with difficult customers, how to maintain a professional image, working on a team, really to make sure that when they enter the workforce or re-enter the workforce, they have some of those reminders, especially as it relates to the construction service industry. Before the learner wraps up, they're also going to be able to prep for industry certifications, and those industry certifications like OSHA 10, EPA 608 are included here for the patron. So they get up to 3 attempts on those certifications, and we have a 100% pass rate for OSHA and around a 95% pass rate for EPA 608, which is a certificate for handling refrigerant that you'd often see in one of our HVAC academies or our facilities maintenance academies. The last thing a learner will experience before they finish programming in a particular academy is an option to enroll with Blue Recruit at no cost, which is a job platform for the skilled trades. So really learners get access to establish an account. It takes less than 5 minutes to create a profile. It'll connect their learning from Interplay, and they'll really be able to be sought out by local employers who are hiring in the skilled trades. So Blue Recruit honors that learners can make a connection with an employer within 24 hours. So that's a really exciting part of Academy, really just making sure that not only are learners exploring, getting trained, getting certified, but also connecting to local employers that have a need for them as an employee. Again, learners can move throughout as many academies as they want, but we just recommend they move through one at a time. So, for example, say you use this resource and you suggest that it takes learners about 3 months to complete, for example. It depends on your particular patrons, but we typically say we give folks around 3 months. Reason being, programs are usually somewhere between 50 and 100 hours in length. You could have a really motivated learner complete programming in as little as 2 weeks. And if they want to jump into another academy, all the better. Just again, we recommend they complete one at a time so that they can stay on track and focused despite being in that self-paced format. So I recognize that that is a lot to digest at once, and sometimes questions come up after the fact. So I'm here for those, and we'll make sure I put my contact information in the chat too if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about how this specifically could make sense for the libraries you're working with. But I do want to leave space today for any questions that you might have while we are here. So I'll stop sharing my screen. I'll put my contact information in the chat. And I'll lean on the group to let me know if there are any questions that you want answered now.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Does anyone have any questions?
How many, I forgot to ask, like, is there a seat limit or anything for Interplay?
There's no seat limit for career exploration. It's included for all patrons. So anybody who would want to sign up can have their name and email entered. We do have packages starting at 15 licenses for Interplay Academy seats that are coupled with career exploration. So that's our minimum base package. And then we have folks who use as many as a few hundred Academy licenses in a year. So it really depends on the level of need. Sometimes folks start out with the base package and then grow it. Sometimes folks say, I have big goals to meet, or I'm using a grant and I need to train 150 learners. So there's a lot of flexibility there. Does that help?
Yes.
Perfect. I see that Nick is asking about cost structure. We're super transparent with our pricing. So again, happy to send that over afterwards as well. But our packages start at $19,950. That includes 15 Academy licenses, which include all the certifications for up to 15 patrons, and then career exploration for as many patrons as you'd like. That includes all administrative access, all reporting on the back end, so there's no other fees that you would see. Again, that's $19,950 annually for unlimited career exploration and then up to 15 patrons. Then it's an additional $949 per patron who completes Academy for their certifications and training. So I am happy to send that over after as well. And then I see Hillary, you had a question about how many of the students utilize Blue Recruit after completing an academy program. I don't have an exact benchmark for how many learners engage. I would say surprisingly, it's less often than you would think. And the reason there that we've been able to pick up on is lots of times folks are getting connected to employers before they start training or in the training process. So a lot of times folks won't even necessarily kind of utilize that feature because they already have opportunities in hand from exploring them throughout the training process. But I can definitely check with our product team and get some data on how many folks are actually then taking advantage of that Blue Recruit feature post-program completion.
I have a question for the things with the score for maybe getting a certification or getting something recognized. Is there proctoring or some other way to make sure that the person taking the test is the person, that it's getting associated with?
Yeah, great question. So with our industry recognized credentials like OSHA 10 and EPA 608, OSHA 10, we partner with CareerSafe to offer that training, and that's run completely online in a digital format. EPA 608 is offered completely online as well, but we use a partner called ProctorU to help with that exam. So they'll actually proctor the learner, make sure that they don't have supplementary materials around them, make sure that they're not utilizing a phone. So they are required to be on a device for that particular exam that has a camera attached to it so we can know that the learner is completing it in an honest, intentional way.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I see your question, Nick, about whether licenses can be shared between institutions. Absolutely. Oftentimes we see systems or particular libraries grouped together on contracting. What's great about our platform is that you can subgroup out your learners. So, for example, if someone got together, let's just say for math, easy math purposes, um, the 15 license base package was split between 3 libraries and they each had 5 licenses, we can then subgroup those out into subgroups in the Academy platform that are labeled with the particular libraries that they're associated with or particular departments within libraries. There's a lot of flexibility for how we can sort of siphon that out in the platform so that you can see exactly what you need to and make sure licenses are where they need to be if folks are collaborating on a partnership.
So I have another question. You said we talked earlier about how it was device agnostic, but looking at some of the interactivity, do you kind of recommend that at some phase, VR headsets or something like that might be beneficial, or do you think that it's the same experience no matter what?
I think VR is definitely the best possible experience because a learner is actually like looking around the room, using hand pieces to engage with their tools and equipment. But I recognize that's also not always a feasible option for folks. So I would say the experience is incredible on a tablet, a laptop, or a desktop. The only place I would personally encourage folks to stay away from is a phone, not because it's not manageable, but the screen is a bit small, so it's hard to be as engaging. It's hard to actually pay attention because you're getting a lot of notifications compared to the other devices. So I think it's naturally a more distracting device to complete training on. So while it is an option, I personally recommend to steer folks away from completing on their smartphone. Actually, in a lot of our implementations, we don't even mention that we're accessible and have an app on a phone. A lot of times we see like administrative users prefer the phone or like someone is using it to watch a quick video on the job for our employers. But in the training and education space, we typically say we prefer tablet, laptop, desktop, just to make sure that the learner is as engaged as possible. Um, Nick, I see your question about what kinds of schools we've worked with. We work with anyone ranging from middle school who's offering career exploration to a high school that it has a plumbing program and we're supplementing their NOCD or their NCCER curriculum. We essentially work with districts as large as New York City public schools, all the way down to an individual school in an extremely rural area. And then great question, Ben. I see you ask whether licenses are reusable. So for example, if someone goes through the program and exits, can their information be wiped and a new learner is installed in the same year? For our Interplay Achieve platform, which is really our catalog of our catalog of resources for libraries, like all of our courses, licenses are recyclable. For Academy, career exploration licenses are unlimited. And then for the Academy pieces, if a learner completes more than 25% of the program, because of the certifications attached to them, we unfortunately cannot reallocate the license. But that's why we have that career exploration functionality to make sure that folks are committed to the learning before they move into an academy program. So our completion rates are well over, for most trades, 85%. We see 90% in a lot of the other trades as well. Great questions, everyone. What other pieces might be top of mind that I might not have covered or questions that might not have been asked? If there are no further questions, I'll definitely send over some resources to the team for distribution afterwards. I know sometimes they can get lost in the chat, but I'll get over my contact information. I want to get over an info sheet on Interplay Academy as well as Interplay Achieve in case that's something you want to explore further. And then all of the program guides that we have for all of our content. So that way you can see outlines, structures, the courses, the different competencies that are covered within each of our trades. Oftentimes we find that helps folks to understand really what a patron is going to go through in the training experience. I'll also send over some of our technology suggestions. So if VR is something that's on your radar, we actually don't contract with the devices, not because, again, we're not a huge proponent of them, but there are so many amazing software programs that you can use on virtual reality. We don't want you to get locked into just being able to use Interplay on a headset. So we provide suggestions for headsets that you can prefer and procure at affordable costs. Things like the Oculus MetaQuest, a Pico, a variety of different options out there so that if you are exploring bringing VR to your libraries, if you haven't already, we have recommendations, setup support help, and can show you a little bit more about how that experience would look for patrons too. So I'll get those resources over this afternoon. But any other questions before I turn it back over to the team? Great. Well, thanks for your questions. I super appreciate the time. I know you guys have a lot on your plate and a lot to cover in your meeting, so we appreciate you being interested in simulation-based learning and happy to answer any more questions as they come up. Because I know I'm a processor, and you'll catch me like 3 days from now cooking dinner, and I'll think of a question. We're here for those too when they come up.
Thank you so much, Danielle. This was really interesting. I'm also very impressed by how you almost like anticipated all the questions that everybody had. So I'm glad we were all on point with things that other libraries or other places have asked as well.
Thanks.
Yeah, any other either related to interplay or experiential learning or anything else? Any questions, any comments? Otherwise, Danielle, thank you one more time, and I will end the recording and I will close out the meeting. So let me just stop the recording.